Here, the LAProbateExpert.com with our live Thursday 4 p.m. Probate Weekly. You can find it at probateweekly.com. We get together every week on Thursdays 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We get investors, wholesalers, real estate agents, vendors talk about how to make money in probate, selling real estate, investing in real estate, working with professionals. Let me get the recording going here. And we live stream this on Facebook and YouTube. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can put comments there. We'll probably pick them up during the call. Or if you register at probateweekly.com, you can come in live on the Zoom call and ask questions live. And so each week we try to bring a guest or have some content to help you with the business, and then work together as a group and try to find a way to make more money. I will share with you, I sometimes say every week, which is the more you participate, the more you give in life, the more you get. So you're welcome to be on the call and just watch, but if you want to participate, the more you participate, the better. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box or put it in the comments. I assure you, or raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask when appropriate. I assure you, if you have a question somebody else does or 10 people do, and by participating,
are we live?
Make it more interesting.
Are we live?
We are live. We are live on YouTube, live on Facebook, and live on Zoom. So, okay. Thank you, Phil.
Is that the seminar, or do I have to wait till 4 o'clock? Okay.
We're starting right now. We're starting right now. So I'm really excited to have here today a key vendor. One of the challenges of probate, in general, probate skews lower income. And there's a lot of reasons why. One is people who plan in advance will get living trusts many times, avoid probate for a lot of reasons. But oftentimes the only asset is the house, and maybe the heirs don't have any other savings or any other money. And so they have a house or two or three, but no cash. And without that cash, they don't have the money to pay for the expenses of the property, which could be a mortgage or property taxes or insurance, maintenance of the property, utilities, or maybe don't have money for legal fees to get an attorney to help them through the probate process, or maybe even more sophisticated legal fees, something for like evicting a tenant that might be a problem, or settling disputes with other heirs. And so one of the solutions we have as real estate professionals and probate professionals is to help them get some money. Sometimes it's selling assets, but many times there's equity in the property that can be unlocked, or equity in other assets can be unlocked with a company that will advance the heirs part of the inheritance before they actually get the money. And so one of the companies I've used or some of the contacts I've used, Paul Wilkins, I met him, I believe originally in the courthouse. He's written a book on the subject of probate. He's an expert. I've seen him at probate property auctions and such, so I know he's got a full vision of the marketplace. So Paul, welcome to our call. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.
So just for starters, I blanked on your company name because I know you personally. The company that you're involved with is?
Approved Inheritance Cash, and we're located in Pasadena, California.
Okay, Approved Inheritance Cash. And so how did you get into the business of approved inheritances?
Actually, kind of a sad story, but back in 1996, I had been working for a couple of commercial banks and got laid off. And I saw an ad in the LA Times. It was a blind ad. And I got called in. The company was National Consumer Finance, which was in West LA at the time, ultimately merged with Budget Finance. And so since 1996 to the present, I've been involved one way or another in doing probate advances, administrator loans, and so forth. It's been a good ride, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Fantastic. So describe what's the most common product or most common situation that you get involved with?
Typically, somebody needs money to move. The estate's selling the property, and for whatever reason, the heir who's living there, or heirs, plural, don't have the funds to move. So probably the number one reason we advance money to people is to help them relocate.
So mom and dad had a property, son's been living in it for 10, 15, 20 years, needs money for deposit, first and last month's rent maybe, moving help or whatever that looks like. What's the most common dollar amount that you see as an initial advance?
Our average transaction is probably about $10,000. So it's not a large amount, but fortunately for you and I and most of the listeners, that's probably not a significant burden. But for, like you said, the socioeconomic demographic that we deal with, that can be substantial,
Right.
if unattainable, and that's where we come into play.
And it might be not the estate in total, but one of the heirs needs the money. And so it's a way that they can get their cash on their own. They're entitled to it because they're going to be an heir, but they need some of it ahead of time. So it's just a way to make the process move a little more smoothly, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And, I see that. I work as a listing agent with probate and trust. I have a transaction now as a trust where in order to get the property sold, as an agent, I offered advance money, not to the heirs, but to the transaction, basically. And it can be a bit between HOA dues and some property taxes and insurance and move out company and cleanup and such. It can add up pretty quickly. So what percentage of the time do people come to you to borrow money for attorney's fees? Like they want to do a probate, but they don't have the money, or they start on their own and they get stuck in the mud. They need some money to get some legal help. How often does that come up for you?
Frequently, I'd say 5 to 10% of the time.
Okay.
People don't have the money for that. And you and I know that good probate attorneys won't necessarily require the money up front. They'll front the filing fees and so forth to get the estate going. But there's a lot of attorneys who won't do that. And so, there's a certain amount of people out there who are forced essentially to get money from somewhere to commence the probate process.
Right. So that's a chunk of it. So the majority of people need some moving money, or one of the heirs needs some moving money. A second case is they need upfront some attorney's fees to get started, or they may think they do, or they need some money. What else? Now, occasionally you get into a case where I get requests from people who maybe are an heir, aren't happy with the petitioner, the process is going, and want to hire an attorney because they want to litigate. Is that another area or opportunity that you have to advance people money, or is that something you want to avoid?
I'll do it on a limited basis. If they're going to litigate and it's going to take 2-3 years to resolve the matter, I'm probably not too interested in that.
Right.
Conversely, if somebody says, I need an attorney just to watch myself to make sure that I'm not getting ripped off, that's fine. That's a cosmetic situation, and I'm not afraid of those.
Okay. And then I guess there are times when people think they're going to sell the house right away and pay you back immediately, but it takes longer for whatever reason. Either the petitioner takes long, or things come up that were unforeseen. So what's the common time frame that people borrow money, and then what's kind of the long term look like?
Most people approach us early on in the probate process. So most transactions are going to take 9 to 12 months to be paid off, just because I'm going to say, especially with COVID nowadays, it's pretty darn difficult to get a case closed in less than a year right now.
Okay.
Conversely, like I was talking to a gentleman this afternoon, the property's been sold already. The claims period just ended. So, and the estate attorney told me that it should be on calendar in probably 3 to 4 months. So that'll be a relatively short-term transaction and less fees to the client.
I know you do some, what I would call direct consumer marketing of sorts. I also know that you have a good reputation amongst attorneys. What percentage of your business, and again, if I ask you a question is proprietary, or just tell me, I'm fine with that, but I'm curious, what percentage of your business comes from professional referrals like attorneys or real estate agents? What percentage comes from directly to consumer marketing?
I'd say about 10% from professionals, be it attorneys or brokers, such as yourself, other real estate agents, people who, need money for various things, cash for keys or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, but most of it's coming through your marketing program, it sounds like.
Yes.
Good for
the
you.
majority.
Oh, good for you. I'm surprised. I would think it would be different, but I guess it makes sense in retrospect. So consumers come to you, and how important is it that they have an attorney in mind and that you know who that attorney is and are okay with it versus they're not sure? Does it matter to you at all?
It matters only if they go to a rotten apple attorney that I've had a bad experience with, which is maybe, in all the years, I'd say less than 2 or 3 in the whole state. So it really doesn't matter to me. More often than not, people will come to us if they don't have an attorney, and I'll be happy to refer them to one of the, numerous people I've dealt with over the past 25 years. That way I know, I'm comfortable with I did it today again.
I would think you'd be, every attorney in town would be your best friend. Every probate attorney in town would be your best friend because somebody's calling you for money. They kind of need your involvement. And I would believe that a consumer would take your referral as, protecting your interest, which is their interest. So to me, it seems like it'd be a natural, that relationship. I'm surprised it's not a lot more.
Yeah, I wish it were, but. Yeah.
Okay, well, something to work on. Got a question in the chat box from Christopher. Is there a maximum loan amount that you would do or advance that you would do?
Maximum. Once I get up into the 6-figure range, I get a little careful because we're not a bank, or, we're not a BlackRock or, big hedge fund. So we don't have tons of money available. But again, I do have other sources for larger transactions if necessary. So I can always put those people in touch with people who can handle much larger transactions.
So you have people you can go to, and that's just not really your basic business.
Right. We don't have a lender's license. What we're doing essentially is buying a portion of the inheritance from the specific heirs and submitting that contract to the court so we can be paid.
7 in escrow. Enter.
I got that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. So so basically advancing money ahead of time so they have the chance to get some of the money before they've been approved.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is an important distinction that I think people have to understand is that you're not a bank, you're not lending money, getting an interest rate. And so sometimes the money they pay back sounds like a lot, but at the same time, anybody can be in the business who wants to be. I'm sure it's competitive. What are the typical costs or rates for somebody advancing money through your product?
Believe it or not, we're cheaper than the competition. I'm in charge of pricing, so I set it up that way. But let's say somebody wants a $10,000 advance. Payback in a year is typically $16,500. Okay, yes, steep, but this is based without looking at credit. I don't run credit reports. We don't rely on income. We're relying solely on the inheritance. So for a lot of these people, again, who aren't working, don't have the credit, don't have the money, we're one of the few games in town, and we're still in there and willing to help them out.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction is, in my experience, most of the people who get advance inheritance would never qualify for a loan. That's why they're coming to get an advance on their inheritance as opposed to a loan, because there are banks, you could walk into Wells Fargo or B of A and get a personal loan or business loan, but if you don't qualify for that and your only asset, not even your credit, but your asset is the inheritance, then it gets expensive. On the flip side, though, you guys have some costs. People think of how expensive the return is, but
My apologies, can I ask a question?
I've seen you in court. Phil, go ahead. Hold on 1 second. I'll get right to you. I've seen you in court on matters, right? You have to go sometimes and you're an interested party to. So tell me about the types of things that would cause you to need to go to court and get on record or speak before a judge to get paid. What's that look like?
Will contests are frequent.
Right. So just stop right there. So what it means is somebody comes to you, they present a will, they tell you a story, you go, wow, that looks good. We'll advance you $10,000, $20,000. And the next thing you know, 3 months later, somebody else pops up and says the will's no good, or here's the real will, or they aren't really a brother or sister. And now you're advanced money, but now there's some sort of litigation going on, right?
Correct.
And theoretically, you could get no money if the person you give money to isn't in fact in error, right?
It happens, unfortunately.
You
I
see
don't
with a
like
smile
those.
and laugh.
It happens.
Okay, well, hopefully not too much.
My apology. As a real estate agent, what are we trying to learn here? Lending or securing listing?
Well, Phil, I think the reason I've asked Paul on and the reason I've used him as recently as I called him this week on a transaction is our job is to help our clients, which often are estates. And sometimes they have problems and they need money in order to solve the problem. They need to pay somebody to move out of a property. They need to hire
Of
an
course.
attorney. They need to hire an attorney to do evictions. And Paul's a vendor who services me and agents like me.
No doubt about it. But
And helping
are we going ever touch upon how to secure the listing on the probate?
Well, this okay, maybe this is more complicated for you, Paul. We can talk offline. But what I'd say is part of how I secure listings, it's not just asking them to sign a contract with me. It's to give them a more detailed game plan to get the property sold. And if they can't sell the property, I can have a listing, but I'm not going to get paid. But if I can go to them and say, I can help you sell the property by helping you get some cash to get the tenant out, or here's some
Makes
cash
sense.
to fix up the house, or here's some cash to get an attorney to do a partition action, that's one of the things I use to generate listings
course.
is a vendor like this.
Yes.
One of the other ways we can help real estate agents and brokers is, and I do this several times a year, we can reinstate mortgages that are in foreclosure. We can reinstate properties that are up for tax sale.
Uh-huh.
And, pretty much any kind of need, substandard, red tags, if you need money for repairs, critical repairs that the city or the county are coming down on you for, we can provide funds for that also.
Makes
So
sense.
And that way you, the real estate agent, the real estate broker, don't have to put that money out of your pocket,
True.
coming out of my pocket.
Right.
So,
So,
I'm sorry,
So
Bill.
your,
question.
so your information is on the line, available to us? Or-
yeah, so I'll give you contact at the end of the show and it'll be in the show notes. But he has a website and you can contact his company or have people contact his office and they will help people understand how much they can advance and that it can be used as a resource.
I was gonna ask Paul, what's your process of reinstating mortgages? That's interesting. You said that people that may be in foreclosure or
I have a customer that I was helping this week. We did this last year, but he was 2 days away from losing the property to sale. What happens, not to get too technical, is the bank, if somebody dies, the banks won't deal with just anybody. They want to deal with the court-approved administrator or executor. And oftentimes, especially with COVID, the hearings are delayed several months. So the lender doesn't care. They're going to be going full speed ahead to foreclose while you have people living in the property, or there's, like Bill alluded to earlier, there's plenty of equity there. So the transaction, the property could be lost. We can step in, deal. I have years of background in servicing, so I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and make a dozen phone calls to Wells Fargo or Chase or whoever to, get the situation righted.
so it's through your relationships? Because that's pretty impressive. I've never seen anybody save a house 2 days from sale. I mean, I've been in those situations, and you're saying that I know every case is different, but you're just leveraging your relationships with the servicer with the lender.
Not so much. It's just we're able to act quickly. This is not a typical loan where you have to present your income and your credit scores and 3 references and so forth and so on. I can size up a situation pretty quick, often within 20, 30 minutes. And we'll cut to the chase. We can either do the deal or we can't. And if I have a situation that's they're in foreclosure, we're gonna get that reinstatement information right away or just step aside.
And what he's saying is he can make a decision and execute the money within days. Literally, we've done it.
Got it.
Yeah.
And with that money, can hold off the foreclosure. Sometimes negotiating with a lender payments to hold off the foreclosure. They're gonna get $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 rather than the state losing a couple $100,000 in equity. They can advance some of the money and hold things off.
Got it. Yeah, please, Paul, put your information in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now all of a sudden they know what you can do. Paul, you're becoming a popular guy. So what do you see as the biggest mistakes in probate real estate? You must see people all the time who needlessly lose properties, needlessly spend money they shouldn't spend. What do you see as the most common errors that you think are correctable if a real estate agent or investor wholesaler can step in and solve the problem?
I think the biggest issue is that the heirs, the administrators, it's a knee-jerk reaction. They'll respond to the first offer presented to them by a neighbor, by one of the numerous investors that's sending out 100 letters a day to get attention, and they undersell the property substantially.
Right.
I was talking to a guy in Las Vegas this afternoon that it's the first time I've seen one of these. He sold the property to Zillow.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I haven't looked at it that carefully yet, but I'm willing to bet that he probably undersold it by several percent had he gone through a conventional real estate broker and listed the property accordingly.
Right. Yeah. And so I think in general, I've seen their general business practices. They're going to buy it at about a 5% discount to what we could market the property to. So an $800,000 property that we would retail at 800, they'll offer it at 760. And some sellers like that because it's quick and easy, and others want top dollar. I've also seen them make mistakes and overpay for property, so it kind of works both ways. Paul, one of the questions we have from Christopher is, what states do you do your business in? Just California, or are you national or regional, or where do you do your business?
Regional. Most of our business is California, but we also have good handles on Nevada and Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
I personally dabble in Arizona, so I'm comfortable there.
Okay.
And again, if you had something in a completely different state, Delaware or Indiana, whatever, I know enough people. I've been in this industry long enough. I can help you. So it's not like you're going to have to scratch your head and make 25 calls. Call me. I'll get you in touch with people right away.
Fantastic. Well, good. Well, again, the reason I brought him on, and I, full disclosure, Paul and companies like Paul will often work with professionals and pay a commission or percentage of the income, and sometimes not, depending if you work with them, or there's competitors that do. And some of those competitors just bring the files to Paul and charge more and give you a commission. So it's kind of, in some ways, hesitant. I feel like, well, this is something that I've done with other companies in the past, but I feel like this is really a key tool for a professional to help this state get through. And so I wanted to share it with you. And Paul's a great guy. Like I said, I've seen him at probate auctions. I've seen him in court. I've worked with him as a client. I called him this week on a case where he has an advance, and I'm trying to help him get the property moved along and sold because it's been hanging out for a while. And so he's really a great resource that you guys are meeting one of the leaders in this business, in this industry, and one of the leaders in Southern California probate industry in general. So here's a chance to ask questions. Christopher, you've asked some great ones. I appreciate your help today. Anybody else have a question, either raise your hand or put in the chat box, or if you're watching online, either YouTube or Facebook, if you put questions there, we'll pick them up as well. But any other questions we have for Paul?
Bill, I have something.
Go ahead, Josh.
I've always wondered, I guess, and maybe you covered this, so I apologize if I missed it. What criteria you look for when you're speaking to somebody, right? So obviously when you go through a conventional loan, FHA, they're going to run your credit. They're going to look at your DTI, your income, all that stuff. Obviously this is different. This is not a conforming loan. This is, an advance. What's the checklist that you look for?
Good question. Obviously, there has to be enough equity in the deal for me to get paid. Sometimes if the property's in foreclosure and they owe 380 and it's worth 420, that's going to be too thin. But if the property's in foreclosure and it's worth 800 and they owe 380, then there's plenty of equity there, because you and I know that property more than likely won't go to sale. Some smart investor or somebody will pick it up, for a lot more than the outstanding debt. So I am looking for equity, yet at the same time, like you alluded to, I can be a lot more flexible. And it depends on the dollar amount that the person's looking for. If people are looking for a relatively small amount, I could be a little more aggressive. If they're looking for $100,000 advance and there's only $150,000 in equity, I'll probably say no.
I think you're also looking for a case where the party's going to sell the property. You're not looking for someone to stay in the property and get an advance of inheritance and then stay there, because then you're not going to get paid back, correct?
Well, actually, having a lending background, I'm a lot more flexible than the competition. I have several clients that have helped get reverse mortgages. For example, we'll advance them the money to pay the attorneys, do the repairs. One in particular, I'm thinking here in Pasadena. We've become old buds. She's a great cook, and she's had me over a couple of times for lunch. Anyway, we helped her pay the estate bills, help her make some repairs, so that when probate closed, the property was distributed to her. We had liened the property to cover my bacon, of course, but then the reverse mortgage paid us off and everybody's happy. She kept the property. I got paid. Life is good.
Nice. Okay. So again, the advantages of working with a professional always are better results, better service. And that's the reason why we have Paul on the call today. He's one of the professionals, one of the top professionals in this field. And I've talked to companies, I've worked with his competitors as well as him, and I've talked to other competitors who I wouldn't do business with because they may not know what they're doing as much as he does. So good. Who else has a question for Paul regarding advanced inheritance and probate in general?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Christopher.
Hi, Paul. Can you advise what is the maximum percentage of an heir's inheritance that you will lend for? So, for example, if their inheritance is $100,000, do you have a cap, broadly speaking?
That's a good question, and it varies. If we're in the early stages of probate and the property hasn't been sold, I'm saying the property because typically most of the cases I see have real property in them, and typically the property is sold because it's the only major asset of the estate. In those kind of situations, I'll probably keep it at a 30 to 40% LTV, so to say. But if the property has been sold and the claims period is over, and I don't have to worry about additional bills coming up and biting the estate on the rear end, then I can go higher than that, and perhaps I've gone as high as 80%. I don't like doing that, but if the circumstances are warranted, we will and can and have done that. So that's a good question, and the only fallback I can say is it really depends on the stage at which we are during the probate process.
And one quick follow-up to that answer, I appreciate that. As we're advising our clients, I understand the ratios you just mentioned, and it's dependent upon the time. The second question that the clients are going to have is, how do you determine what the return is? Well, obviously you determine the return percentage you need based upon similar factors you just mentioned. So let's say you loan someone $10,000, and you would anticipate a year to receive your funds back, and they pay back $16,500. So that's $6,500 or 65% annualized if it takes a year, right? If it takes 2 years, then your return goes down. Do you have any kind of metric that we could use in advising our clients what rates, because that's the easiest way to explain it to them, right? A percentage of the cost for the funds.
If you want to say, just as a ballpark, use 40 or 50%, you could. You're right. If a transaction, let's say that $10,000 transaction gets paid off in 6 months, the price is $14,500. So, I'm not afraid to pull out the scissors and help save the customer some money. But let the pricing go to me, and just tell them it's expensive. I don't make any excuses, and I tell people this all the time. It's expensive, but if we're helping you solve a problem that's keeping you up at night because you're stressed out, or we're saving the property from foreclosure, or helping you move because you have no other money, then the transaction's worth it. If you're going to do something frivolous with the money, like, I have people call out, I want $50,000. What do you want? I want to buy a new car. Well, you know what, my friend? Take $5,000 or $10,000, make that as a down payment, and get a 3% loan from Ford Motor Credit. That's better for you. I'm a former bank lender and a real estate person, so I'm honest. I'll tell the customer the best solution at the cheapest cost to them. And if we're the only answer and the only solution, then I'm not afraid to offer my services and get the job done. But I'm thoughtful and considerate of the situation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
If I can add, Christopher, for your benefit, having worked with him before, if you go to his website, which is approvedinheritancecash.com, you have two choices. You can call him, or you can apply now online and fill in a form. In my experience, I call and get an answer of what they can do right away. So I don't put my customer in the position of having to figure that out. I'll call them and walk through a scenario, and then send them over to them as well. So that way it's a little more, as a realtor, I feel like that I'm packaging up a solution a little more personally than just sending them on to the vendor. Okay, good. Well, that's some good stuff so far. Any other questions, comments? Again, we have a guy here who's a professional, long time. Let me ask you, Paul, COVID, a year ago, March, so 18 months ago, 19 months ago, shut the court down. It was shut down for 3 months or so, opened up to some degree, whatever it is today. I don't know if it's open or closed today, but it is what it is. How has all this changed your business from a year and a half ago?
A good question. Yeah, last year, the few months right after COVID hit and the courts were closed, we were really slow because we couldn't process very much. We couldn't obtain information from the courts, and people couldn't file petitions. So now that the courts have been reopened, I am seeing last few months an increase, at least of the death certificates attached to probate petitions. I am seeing an increase of those petitions attributable to COVID deaths. So I anticipate for probably the next year or so, we're going to have a higher number of probate filings because, unfortunately, due to this pandemic, it's killed more people and more people unprepared for their passing. So these are the people that go through probate. They didn't have time to set up trusts, and unfortunately, their heirs will end up doing the work.
Yep. How do you see the operational differences now, but between now and before COVID, or do you see any differences?
I was talking to an attorney in LA, an LA court this afternoon, or a LA case. It's funny, LA, as you know, Bill, has what, like 5-6 probate courts, divisions. I guess that's a better term. And some of the divisions, if you submit paperwork today, you'll be on calendar in 2 months for a final. Some of them taking 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And that's within the same jurisdiction.
On the same floor.
Yeah. Next door.
Yeah.
Or 2 doors down, 69, 79, whatever, you know. It's very strange how that there's differentials within the same, you know, county.
You know, in LA, I noticed something interesting, that the filings from the filing date to the first hearing is almost always now within 30 to 35 days, which is great. The filings for sale confirmation are almost always 30 to 35 days, unless they request longer. But 850 petitions, Hegseth petitions, for example, are 6 months out still. And I heard the judge say before it's because of the COVID. I'm thinking, why does that take 6 months, but the initial hearing can be done in 30 days? And I think that, you know, what you experience almost is people get away with what they can get away with, and there isn't the same pushing on that. So I would say some things are kind of back to normal. In some regards, the initial hearings are almost faster now because the courts almost want to do everything via video or ahead of time and are moving the cases through to avoid traffic. But other matters seem to take a lot longer. Hearings, for example, are scheduled out when there's a contest a lot longer. Okay.
Well, now it's 60 days out, Bill, from initial hearing.
For an initial hearing, 60 days?
They're 45, 60 days.
No, that's not what I haven't looked at in the last week or two, but we're tracking pretty close. Okay, you know, still better than it was, you know, when COVID first started. They definitely had caught up, and I think now because there's vacation time, the summertime for judges, and there's the holiday times, it might be part of it. There's a week they're closed, I think in September, October they fall behind, but generally, yeah, no, it's definitely it's a moving target for sure. Okay.
Bill, I have one more quick question for Paul, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Paul, just to confirm, do you also provide funding if someone is in the middle of, let's say, a partition sale? Let's say the property was left to 2 heirs, or let's say three people on title as joint tenants, and mom dies, and now the 2 kids own it, tenants in common. Would you loan or provide funds to one to buy out the other if the plan is to resell it?
It's quite possible. If I can't do the transaction, again, I've been in this industry a long time, and I have some good contacts who are, you know, bona fide lenders, so they can get it done. And we're talking specialists. I mean, you obviously can't go to Bank of America or Wells Fargo and get these kind of loans, but I do know people who can make these things happen. Some of them I worked with for many years at a prior employer, and others I've met at the court, like I did Bill years ago, and have just developed good relationships with honest, trustworthy people.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, of course we can't get help with that one. I literally have a petition action I got financing for. And the key, I think, is also having the right attorney in the case. If you have a specialist in partition matters, getting money for them, if that's what's required, an attorney, that you will make sure you get somebody who really knows what they're doing to get the advance done. So I'd be glad to help you with that as well. Great. Who else has a question for Paul? As we're kind of getting towards the wrap up here. Any other questions for Paul? No? Okay, so again, look, Paul's company is ApprovedInheritanceCash.com. I put in the chat box his contact info and his website. If you have questions on a particular deal, you can hit the website, make a phone call, fill out the form. My experience is he'll get you back an answer. If not on the phone call, he'll give you some information, and you get that, and he'll make an answer for you, fairly quickly.
Did I put in a plug for my book?
Please. Oh, actually, you're right. Your book. You know, when I met him, we talked on the phone, and he showed up at court the next day and gave me a copy. I can't quite see it. Let me spotlight you 1 second. Hold on. Spotlight for everybody. There you go. Probate
for real estate
investors.
investors. You can contact me here and I'll be happy to get you a copy.
I read it. It's great. Recommend it. And he's really giving well, this is more for how to buy the property as an investor to make money on finding properties. How do you get them, and how do you get them efficiently and productively? So thank you. That's a yes plug. Not on Amazon. The only way to get it is through you personally. Now they get it through you. Do you sign the book as well?
Sure, be happy to.
I got a signed copy, so definitely you want to get a signed copy as well. Good. So look, that's all I really have today. I don't see any of the questions in the chat box. I don't see any questions on our social media. So thank you everybody for participating. Christopher, thank you for some great questions today. Really made things go well. Let's see, filing at Mosque yesterday, 12/17 initial hearing. Wow, that's 2 months. Josh, you're right. That is out there. So appreciate you guys being on the call today. We do this every Thursday, 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern. We also have recording it if you want to see it, probateweeklyepisodes.com, or all the past episodes on YouTube. If I can help you, call, text, or email me. I'm Bill Gross, the LA Probate Expert. I really appreciate Paul, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate
Thank you, Bill, for
having
having me. Thank you for all the questions.
And reach out to him. There's his contact info in the chat box. Make sure you ask for a copy of the book. If you're from some business, ask for him to sign up for you. Make it a great week. Thank you, everybody, for participating.